All right, so we're going to go over the DBQ we did today. A lot of you guys are in pretty good shape, but we need to talk about what you did right, what you didn't do right. All right, so here's the rubric. Now remember, we're ignoring the unicorn point. Most of you couldn't finish anyway, and if you don't finish, you have no chance of getting the unicorn point. Contextualization goes in the introduction and then the thesis, and then if you just describe two docs, you get 1 point. These 3 points are your easiest points. A lot of you only did in 45 minutes 1 or 2 documents. If you can't do 4 or all 5 documents, you're in serious trouble, because that is the easy. For most of my students, your key is these 3 points. Maybe you'll get one of these that makes it a 4. You couple these, you get 5 or 6. Now remember, a lot of smart people think that it's going to take a 6 for you to get a 3. I do not believe so. I think that most sophomores cannot write DBQs, and that if they have a standard set at 6, very few kids will pass. And this is, the College Board is a capitalistic venture. So I think the pass rate will be 5 or 4 is what I think. But most really, really smart people, a lot smarter than me, think it's going to be 6 documents. So anyway, here's your 3 easiest points. And then if I'm right about it being a 4 or 5, you just need to pick up a couple of easier ones. As I told you earlier, outside evidence is the hardest point. All right, so let's go over here and look at the document. And I can find it here. And all right, so we're going to go here to the document and keep going. Okay, so sorry this is so sloppy, but I'm having trouble with my recorder here. So evaluate the extent to which individuals, people's reactions to state expansion differed. And so basically, most of you came up with they didn't want, they resisted without violence, and they resisted with violence. And I know why you came up with that, because 2 of these documents were in that Scramble for Africa DBQ we did. Now this DBQ, just like the one you did last week, was released by the College Board. So this is the one they chose to use as their example. Okay, so anyway, let's just go ahead and agree that there's going to be 2 groups on this DBQ, and it's for people who didn't want to go along with it and people who didn't want to go along with it and resisted with violence. So 2-point thesis. Most of you got the thesis point. You did exactly what I told you to do. Some of you worded it wrong. Some of you were typing it and messed up and forgot what you were saying, and you know who you are. Anyway, let's go through this. Let's talk about contextualization. Now, because they're talking about so many different parts of the world, this is actually, in my opinion, going to be pretty hard to contextualize. A lot of you mentioned the Industrial Revolution, and because, and I know you're getting that from these videos you've been watching, which is, I hope you're listening, why I've had you watch these videos, because that guy has a ton of information. I thought he kind of stumbled in his live review today, which is why he obviously edits his videos heavily. But anyway, he's got lots of information there. So those of you who talked about the Industrial Revolution and the need for raw materials, some of you talk about exploration. A lot of you listed a lot of good stuff. Some of you are still doing less than 3 sentences. But anyway, I prefer the kitchen sink approach. Many of you got the contextualization point. So if you talked about, again, I think this one would be hard to do the contextualization on, and it might be easy to not get the point here, but a lot of you got it. For the thesis, most of you got the thesis point. Now let's go through the documents. Because remember, if you got the contextualization and the thesis, you already have 2 points. So you need to analyze and argue with 4 documents. If you do that, you get 3 more points. That takes you to a 5, which in my opinion will get you a 3. Then if you can just stumble through caps, a lot of you still doing that wrong, but if you can stumble through caps and get 1 or 2 points, you're golden, maybe even get a 4. All right, so let's look at document 1. And remember, when you look at a document, always look at who said it first. And as you're analyzing, a lot of kids read it, then they go back and look at who said it. Don't do that. So this is some ruler, and this is a ridiculously worded document. Says, I've thought about you wanting to take over my country. I've decided. I'm happy to say, no way, buddy. So this is a resistance without violence. Now, that's what they're saying. We do not want to give up our sovereignty to you. So this document goes in the we're not going to fight group. Now, how do you get caps out of this? so what they said was, we do not want to give up our governorship or sovereignty to you. That's what they said. Now remember, to get caps, you have to say who and why. And so you would say, this was written by the ruler of the colony in question. That's who. And they are probably very polite, because they do not want to anger the Europeans, because they know the Europeans are militarily more powerful than them. And that's how you do it. And a lot of you said that, and a lot of you said other things, but you see what I just did right there. So that would get you, remember, that would get you 1 point. And a lot of you are going to pass or fail based on 1 point. All right, and as a coach, I can tell you there's lots of games where I've won or lost. Our girls beat Gainesville this year in the last like 20 seconds of the game, and our girls water polo team, and it was by 1 point. And Gainesville is good; they got a college coach, and so I have won and lost many games by 1 point. All right, the next one is the Tongass Proclamation to soldiers and civilians. Anyway, these guys are fighting back, so this goes in that other group. Now it's a proclamation, and so a lot of you I gave credit to, because you said, okay, this document says that they're not going to give in and they're going to fight back. And then you would say, this was stated in a proclamation, which its purpose was to stir up the soldiers and civilians to fight. Many of you said that, and you got that right. Somebody actually gave me a definition. They were going for the outside evidence down here, and they talked about what the definition of Neo-Confucianism was, which probably got out of one of the study guides, but hey, that's what they're there for. So now I've done caps on both of these. Moving on, somebody, I don't remember who it was, one of the boys gave a great point of view on this. So it's an Ethiopian painting about the time the Ethiopians beat the Italians. There's not a whole lot of times the Africans wound up beating the Europeans. There's a few famous times. Once was when the Zulu beat the British. That's very famous. I'm sure the descendants of the Zulu in Africa are still proud of that. And this is the time when the Ethiopians stomped the Italians. Nobody brought up the lost Ark of the Covenant, and I was kind of disappointed. But so anyway, this shows that they fought back. But here's what somebody said. I can't quote them exactly. They said, of course, this paint. So what the painting shows is they fought back. That's what. Who? It was an Ethiopian who painted it. And why? And a lot of you said, well, they probably wanted to over glorify, they're beating the Europeans. Somebody put they wanted to show that they'd given the Europeans a beat down or a put down, something like that. I laughed so hard. I thought that was really good. Whoever did that, you get the A for the day. So we've done 3 documents now, and I've done caps on each of them. I told you all along, you've got to do caps reflectively. You've got to do so many of these documents that you can just do this as you're writing through in a hurry. And I will say a lot of you are getting credit. All right, moving on to document 4. This is the United States basically had taken over Hawaii, and the Queen of Hawaii is saying, hey, what you guys did is illegal. Now, she's not saying anything about killing anybody. So she's resisting without violence. Now, how would you do point of view? She wrote a letter to the United States. That's kind of ridiculous. She wrote it to the whole country. Was it put in the paper? Anyway, so I don't know how you do this, but you'd say the what she said was, we do not want to be ruled by you. Who she is the ruler, the lawful ruler of Hawaii. And why is she saying this? It's an appeal, and a lot of you got this, an appeal to the United States to do the right thing, in quoting, loyalty and justice and all that kind of stuff. A lot of you danced right around it, and I can tell you the AP World readers would probably give you credit for it. And lastly, we have document 5. And this is one of the resistance ones where they're not killing anybody. And I'm glad you didn't call the Japanese the Japanese. But anyway, this is kind of weird here. This is a Japanese aristocrat in pioneering education for women. So this is someone who teaches women, and I'm assuming it's a woman because it says letters of a Japanese princess. So this goes in the category of we're not fighting. We're not going to fight you, but we don't want to go along with you. And she's basically saying, hey, you Europeans, this is what she said. You Europeans look ridiculous because you're going out of your way to make us look small, and you're really making yourselves look small. Okay, so most of you got that. Let's talk about caps. This So what she said was, you're making yourself look ridiculous. You're trying to put us in our place. The word for that is paternalism. Anyway, that's what she said. And this is from the point of view of a female Javanese princess who wanted to educate women. And why she said it was she wanted to shame them. I don't really know what you'd put. She wanted to shame them for their supposed cultural superiority. And again, you might want to throw in there, you're just grasping for straws here. You might want to go in the fact that most women in society back then were treated as second-class citizens. So she is a woman, probably in a male-dominated society, which is being dominated by another male-dominated society. So again, I don't know how you would do that, but the main thing is that you do something. Now, somebody asked me, do you have to use all the documents? And the answer is no. Now, I'm pretty sure you have no chance of getting the unicorn point unless you use all 5 documents. And I, like most teachers, think the unicorn point is a waste of time because you have a really convoluted way of writing your thesis and you have to use all your documents, get done early, and then basically it's almost like writing 2 different DBQs at the same time. But here's why you should use all 5 documents. Remember, if you describe 2 documents, you get a point, okay? If you argue with 2 documents, you get another point. If you argue with 2 more documents, you get another point. That's the 3 easy points, which most of you got. The kids that didn't get it didn't finish the DBQ. Some of you got 2 or 3 points. You've got to be quicker than that. And those of you who haven't been watching these videos or paying attention, you're really hurting for, being able to go through this quickly. But anyway, I'm here to help. We're going to do 3 of these. We did 1 today. We'll do 1 Tuesday and Wednesday. And if we have time, we might even do 1 Thursday morning. But remember, I have over 100 kids taking the econ exam. And if you think some of you are shut down, the seniors are dang sure many of them shut down. All right, so here, let me get back to my point here. If you do all 5 documents, keep in mind that every time you do pointed caps on something, you have a chance at those 2 points. So let's say I did caps on all 5 of these documents. Now, I did it poorly on this one, but I did it. And if I wasn't trying to go in such a hurry, I would have done a better job. But I could get the point here. But I've done it on all 5 of them. Let's say you tried it on all 5 and you did it wrong on 3, but you did it right on 2. You still get the 2 points. Okay. Now, here's the other reason you should do the 5th document if you can. Many of you cannot finish, and they know that. But here's why. Let's say that you analyzed a document and you did it wrong. Somebody said that and I don't want to call anybody out, but you know who you are. Somebody said in that painting where the Ethiopians had beaten the Italians, they were talking about the Spanish. The Spanish aren't mentioned anywhere in there. So when you make a mistake like that, you lose credit for using that document. So here's the thing. If you use all 5 documents and you misinterpret one, you can still get the points for arguing with 4 documents. I hope that makes sense. Now, the last thing is what I've always told you was the hardest thing, which is outside evidence. All right. So we talked about, remember these documents are from all over the world. So what were some other examples of people fighting back during this time period? The Boxer Rebellion. Remember those guys in China with the cool name, the Society of Harmonious Fists? They went out and killed all the Christian missionaries and revolted against the Europeans. That was the Boxer Rebellion. Remember the Sepoy Rebellion down in India? Some of you mentioned the Native American ghost dance, and I didn't like it to start with. A couple of you mentioned that, but now I think back, it's actually pretty smart. Some of you mentioned the slave revolts in the United States. It'd be nice if you knew the name of one. I think the one we learned about was the Stono Rebellion. But the Sepoy Rebellion, remember they were making them put the cartridges in their mouth, and the Hindus were offended by the fact that it was cow grease, and the Muslims were offended by the fact that it was pig grease or pork grease. That is an example of fighting back. What is an example of the domination of the Europeans? The Berlin Conference, called by Bismarck. Those are all things you could have used for outside evidence. This is why you guys have 3 days left. You need to spend every extra moment you have studying those study guides and watching these videos. I know you think it's senseless me making you watch these videos. You need as many facts in your head as you can. Anyway, mic drop, I'm done.